improve the flows in that area. Secondly, we are looking at, and the board should get a request for capital, and it will go into the capital program, and it is an ATAP and so on, and that is for some more trains. We're actually starting to run out of train capacity. In fact, our projections are we won't have enough trains to carry people by 2019, and they take 2 years to build. So we are putting in a request for more trains. We're looking at making them, if you like, hybrid or independently powered, or a number of them, which will enable trains to go beyond Swanson. There is no option to run power through there unless we spend hundreds and hundreds of millions on tunnels, but the hybrid option would allow train up into Kumeu and Huapai. And thirdly, we're having discussions with respect to ferry to see how we can increase both frequency and capacity on the ferries. We believe that that's probably the most underutilised area. It's the most protected water we have, and is an option to get people from Hobsonville and the west into the city centre on a frequent basis.
Thank you. So I guess if the Mayor's calling for acceleration in public transport, we're going to have to invest a lot more in that. Thank you.
Thank you. Right. Well, we have Councillor Darby and Councillor Lee, and I have no doubt that it'll be about the first quarter operational report.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. Well, look, the big takeaway here for me today was probably Chair Lester's opening about we need to lubricate the decision-making process, because I think we can talk about projects galore, but unless we get this right, we just keep going over the same ground. So, look, I'd just like to park that as a takeaway from this meeting, that I'd like to work with the Mayor and others on, with AT, NZTA, etc., because this is a big issue, and it's reflected in the morning crawl. The laborious pace of decision making actually shows up every morning and evening. So thank you for that, Lester. Just very quickly, your words were for us to more aggressively pursue travel demand management interventions. Are you talking multiple? There are the big ones like, you know, congestion, network congestion, but then there are the second and third tier ones right down to school travel planning. And I always remember the best dollar in transport was a TDM dollar, and I don't think that's changed. Are you referring, when you talk about more aggressively pursuing TDM interventions, both the big ones and the second and third layer ones?
Yeah, the entire hierarchy, but in particular ensuring that we get momentum and energy behind those that require a number of Crown agencies and the like. So, for example, the road pricing and the like, because it'll be like everything else. If I just go back to the comment about the lubrication, the one thing that we collectively, the collective we, can actually control is the speed of decision making. There's a lot of other things that we can't control. So, yeah, the whole lot of those, I mean, we have to be squeezing the juice out of everything. You know, we cannot leave any of these elements alone, because the reality is that as the population has grown as it has, overlain over the infrastructure deficit, the resilience has just been extinguished. So you can have, you know, one or two crashes that might be able to be adapted to. It's very difficult now. So yeah, we want to try all of those, but in particular the big ones, because we need to start soon. But parking strategy, for example, that is part of demand management as well. And we did appreciate in the draft letter of expectations, which, by the way, we fully support, is that the sort of political view that we need to actually move on some of these initiatives like on-road car parking and the like, because if we step back from those, we won't solve the problems. So I just think the more courage, just being more realistic and actually keeping the big picture in mind is going to be really critical. But yeah, everything. We pull every lever as hard as we can. We just came from a board meeting where we've given that exact instruction. Okay, thank you. Yeah. And just a second question, and very quickly, one little concern, and maybe it was just the way you articulated it, but you said the new network will take as long as it takes. This is the bus network that Mark's charged with. It's fallen behind a little bit already. Is there any risk of it falling behind further, and what is the drop-dead date for completion of the new bus network?
Through you, Mr. Chairman. So West will be May, June next year. Central and East towards the end of next year, early the following year. And at the moment, North Shore is around April 2018. So in terms of risks, we're still negotiating with all the operators in terms of their incumbent negotiated contracts. So there is a risk that those negotiations may take longer, but we'll be doing our best to actually keep it on track. The only other risk would be mobilisation of operators once we've awarded those contracts. We're talking potentially, depending on which operators win the contracts, new buses, new staff, new depots, etc. But absolutely, we're trying to do it as quick as we can.
April 18, thank you.
Right, we have councillor Lee.
I just want to take up the matter of the Mayor's question about the airport public transport link. I think this is emerging and is going to be our major transport problem, given the airport is the country's, not just the region's, principal gateway, and it is of critical importance to Auckland and New Zealand as a trading city and a trading nation. The answer to the Mayor's question really lies in the Auckland plan. Second decade, commence building a rail link to the Onehunga branch line and to the main trunk line at Puanui. Puanui is 6.8 kilometres away. We've invested $1 billion in electrification over the last 5 years into our rail system, and we're investing another $3 billion with the city rail link. The Mayor's question referred to mass transit, which is another word for trams. The answer to that is another question. How long does it take to build a 23-kilometre tramway winding through the suburbs of Auckland and get government approval to build it? And I think that's why the Auckland Transport answer, with all due respect, was very long and rambling. So that's the question. It's up to us, not really to be asking questions, but to provide answers and to provide leadership. The public is aware what the solution is. The Auckland plan is aware what the solution is. That was arrived at from an interagency process called the SMART process, and it's time we started exercising some leadership, because this is going to be a major problem for Auckland and New Zealand, and we can't sit on our hands and wait for the trams to turn up. Thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you very much. We'd like to wish you and Mayor and all the councillors Merry Christmas and Happy New Year, and we look forward to working with you to deal with these issues as we go through the next few years. Thank you very much.
We will allow a bit more time next time, but we just wanted an introduction, but however, we gave you double the amount of time allocated. So
Thank you very
appreciate
much.
it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Happy Christmas.
Thank you.
ACIL.
Mr. Chairman, I have a question of you, if I may, just briefly. This has been an interesting session, but if we are to come to grips with lubrication, as is referred to by Councillor Darby, it strikes me that with 3 committees that Auckland Transport is reporting to, it is actually going to become quite clumsy again, as we experienced in the last council. And I just wondered whether that is something you're giving consideration to in a governance sense. I know that on Thursday there's a discussion around governance, but I do believe that we are going to have ongoing problems, and in the last term of council it degenerated into anecdotal stories of what councillors were experiencing with transport rather than a clear and focused approach, and I just wonder whether you could give me some guidance as to what your plan is in terms of keeping it sharply focused.
I can't really give you the guidance other than I think the Mayor can respond, but we are going to be reviewing the structure, I believe, sometime, and I'm not quite sure when. But I think we're aware of the challenges. But Mayor Goff, do you want to comment?
Yeah, I think it's a good thing that that the CCOs have to report to committees. One, this is on their financial performance. Perhaps our questions were a little wide of that in terms of actually service delivery. Some of the questions that we asked, myself included, could quite properly have been before the planning committee, but never let a chance go by, and I think a number of us took that approach. I don't think it's a bad thing, but maybe through the chair we have to be a little disciplined in how we focus our questions for when AT is before planning and when it's before finance and performance, and that's just something we've got to get in our heads individually.
So So we have the other CCOs. I mean, just if we could just take that on board. I mean, to be honest, I don't know what question people are going to ask until they ask it, so it's a bit hard. I don't want to be overruling you and making you out of order after you've answered the question. So if you could just all focus that this is the Finance Committee, and it is relating to Q1 reports. John. ACIL, folks.
Good morning.
Just want to introduce yourself, John, because there's new people here.
Sure. So, John Crawford from Auckland Council Investments Limited. First of all, I'd like to send apologies from my chair, Keith Turner, who's Wellington-based and can't be here today. Very happy to answer any questions that the committee has on our performance over the last quarter. Perhaps just to give an overview, last year we looked to simplify the structure of ACIL. We removed 2 subsidiary companies and amalgamated them into the parent. We also repaid the debt back to Auckland Council, so we have a much simplified reporting structure and an easier way, we think, to measure our performance. We don't have to think about what gets paid in dividend versus what gets paid out in interest loans to council. So keen to talk to people about how we've gone in the first quarter and indeed any other questions you might have.
So this one we could have quite quickly because basically the figures are looking quite good and quite promising, so shouldn't be a lot of concern. And remember, this is not about port extensions or anything like that, so
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, John. I mean, amazing figures for Auckland International Airport. You've reported an increase in value of 226 million in a quarter. That's remarkable. Our share of that, I guess, is about 45 to 50 million. My question is, why would we ever want to sell our shares in AIAL?
Right. Well, of course, the decision to sell... decision
like a political question.
I was going to say the decision to sell shares...
So I'm struggling to hear this very important answer, Mr. Chair.
Unfortunately, the share price has tanked since the end of September. It's now at $6.12, and we've lost $400 million since the peak. So
You're still ahead.
You walked in for that one.
So
Stop digging, Mr. Mayor.
I was going to say obviously the issue to hold or sell Auckland shares in Auckland Airport is not ours. We manage the shares on behalf of the council. I'm very happy to enter into any debates over the merits or otherwise of holding the current level of shareholding, but perhaps not as part of this meeting.
Yeah.
Mr.
Maybe
Chair,
we need to hold on to them longer so they can recover.
They're still ahead, Mr. Chair. I just want to, your dividend for the full year is going to be about $86 million. Is that correct?
That's correct, yes.
And I just want to point out, Mr. Chairman, that's the equivalent of about a 6% rate rise. So in terms of the importance of revenue over debt and our borrowing capacity, that's a very significant dividend. So we're very pleased that we're receiving that from the CCO, indirectly through the CCO from the ports.
So just remind those councillors that those of you of the mind to think about it would be a nice thing to free up a couple of $1 billion. We have to consult on that because it's a strategic asset. So that would be something that will be discussed next year, as we know when we do the EY and Cameron reports, because it's our fiduciary duty to consider all options, but it would be going through consultation if we were to make that extremely bold move. Are there any other questions? Oh, sorry, Councillor Casey, yes.